Hello, and welcome to Postcards from a Soul and Her Human. I'm the human Gina. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know this has been an interesting journey for anyone who is listening from the outside, and sometimes it's difficult to put the pieces together of what I'm talking about. And I have to admit, sometimes I feel that way as well. I receive fragments of information at times through tarot readings, through social media messages, and through signs and synchronicities out in the world. And sometimes I'm not exactly sure what they mean until a time comes where everything falls together. And it's interesting that I am at one of those moments where everything has kind of come into full view or my perspective. And when I say everything, I mean the overarching purpose of my visit here in this incarnation. I've talked about myself at length as a channel for my higher self, as an instrument, a human instrument to do what she came to this earth to do. And I've gotten bits and pieces of who she is, my soul, the one who is driving this body, who has inhabited or embodied, who I have embodied in this human form. The soul who has basically restarted my operating system by sending me into a 3-year, almost 3.5 year isolation phase. And I am told that I'm going to be coming out of this isolation phase very soon here. And very soon in linear time can mean anything. But I understand that I am to move out of this isolation and into the next phase of my life. And I describe this next phase as a new timeline. And that what I've understood about this intuitively, mostly, and through the messages that I've received, is that I'm moving into a different lifetime, a lifetime I could not have lived from the energetic environment and who I was energetically in my old life before I went through this profound awakening. And I've been going through an ongoing reconditioning of what I refer to as the alien tech of my new body. From what I understand, it's been transformed from a carbon-based to a crystalline base, which is like a silicon-based interior or physicality, which is lighter and more efficient, which is filled with light, literally. So lighter means more than one thing here. And that allows me to move through this world uplifted or ascended from the 3D matrix, which I've talked about that. So what this means is that I am now ready energetically to move into a new epoch or a new lifetime, one I could not have experienced before. And this timeline that I'm shifting into is made of higher frequency energy. And this is the energy or the frequency or the dimension, maybe is another way to put it, where I'm going to experience all that I understand is part of my destiny. And this is going to include true love with my twin flame, which is not all going to be candy and rainbows. I understand there's going to be a lot of challenge there, which is part of the reason that I'm coming into union with my twin flame. And I'll just briefly explain what I've been doing for the last 3.5 years in this isolation, in this period of isolation. And during this period of isolation, I have let go of everything in my old life. I mean, everything and everyone, including my own family members. I am walking this earth 100% alone right now. I have people in my life, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about anybody close to me. There is no one in my life that is close to me that I spend time with on a regular basis or speak to on a regular basis. I have family members that I cherish, but they're not part of my daily life. Only my daughter and my granddaughter. They're the only two bright lights left in this dimming world that I still exist within, this old timeline. So I'm being prepared to move into this new epoch and to come into union with my twin flame, John. to have this experience. And this experience is not just for me, the human being, to be able to enjoy true love as a reward for all the work that I've done to transmute trauma from my bloodline. So what I didn't finish saying was the purpose of this awakening and this cleansing of my own body, my old body, and this reboot, or actually new operating system that I've been outfitted with, is for me to act as an instrument of healing. And what that means is that I am been redesigned, and this I experienced early on in my awakening, to transmute trauma from my body. And this trauma is my trauma that I experienced during this lifetime, which I've talked about at length. But also I grew to understand that I was also transmuting the trauma from my bloodline or my ancestors. And I, of course, didn't understand that exactly before. I understand it more now, that I am here as an instrument to transmute or heal trauma from generations of my ancestors, also from my community, which I'll talk about more in a few minutes, and my soul family. So I am here intentionally to transmute trauma, not just for me, but for my bloodline and my community, my families. That is my purpose here primarily. And this is why I had to have this ironclad access to my intuitive channel, which was one of the main, or what was really the centerpiece of my healing in this incarnation. I spoke about this in the episode called Intuitive Mission. And you can see how the pieces are coming together. I didn't know then what I know now. So each and every episode, every article that I write is a fragment of information that blossomed into something all on its own that happened to be pieces of a much larger puzzle. And this puzzle is coming together more and more for me every day. I'm going through such an incredible, rich period of creativity and of inspiration. I'm writing almost every day, and I'm recording way more frequently than I ever have. So I'm here as an instrument to transmute trauma or to heal karma from generations and generations. And I'm talking about going back to the origins, what I understand to be the origins of my soul. So the purpose of John and I coming together is not just for him and I to fall in love and have this beautiful life, but we are twin souls. We are actually one soul split in two, from what I understand. And when we come together, we are going to activate each other. So there's going to be an activation, energetic activation, that is going to trigger embedded or imprinted trauma in both of our bodies. So the trauma that I wasn't able to transmute because I didn't have a linkage to it, or I didn't experience it myself, which was sexual abuse, my intuition being broken, victimhood, and everything else that I've experienced in this lifetime and previous lifetimes, I've been able to transmute. But John and I will trigger in each other deeper, more embedded trauma that comes from our bloodline. So we all carry an echo in our bodies from our ancestors. So if my ancestor was a serial killer back in 1500 AD, or and they carry that signature in their body, and that signature or that trauma is echoed through their bloodline. So it has to be overcome. So when you break a cycle, you break that karmic cycle. And this is what I'm here to do, is to break karmic cycles. So I don't know that I have a serial killer. That was just a convenient example. But my point is whatever mistakes that were made in the past by our ancestors has to be reconciled by somebody in the bloodline. And I am here as a focal point to transmute or heal or reconcile trauma on a grand scale for my community and my ancestors. And yes, it sounds like a big job, and it is a very big job, and it's one that I've learned to embrace. I've mastered the art of transmuting trauma, and I wrote an article about it called The Emotional Baggage Handler, and I did a podcast with the same name, when I discovered through my awakening how the body naturally has a mechanism that transmutes pain. And if we engage with this mechanism, which I learned to do during my awakening, we can intentionally and honestly embrace the process, which I learned to love, I would look for reasons to feel sad, and I would examine it and sit by myself and wonder where it came from. And I'd coax it to come up into my awareness. And when it did, I would hold it and I would acknowledge it, and then I would let it go. And when you do that, it leaves forever. It's reconciled. It is no longer trauma or pain or whatever form of lower vibrational energy in your body. It's no longer there. It leaves. And this is how you free the body of emotional baggage, which what you're technically doing is freeing the body of low vibration. And when you can remove low vibration from your body, you ascend. That's what ascension is. That's how you go from the lower vibrancy of the 3D matrix, where we're meant to struggle, out into the ascend up into, and I'll say up into because it lightens your load. So it makes you lighter physically and in every other way. Your body becomes lighter. I went through a transformation during this emotional baggage release that actually changed the physiology of my body. It changed the color of my eyes. It lowered my weight dropped by, I would think at this point, since I'm losing more weight still because of this more pronounced period I'm going through, I've probably lost upwards of 40 pounds since I started this. And I was not an overweight person before. I was always very small. But now I'm incredibly lean because just if you think about an athlete, they're at their utmost potential and ability to perform when they're at their highest physical expression. So the same thing energetically, I am at my highest energetic expression right now. I am as light as I could possibly be. I am lean. I am strong. I'm still going through a lot symptomatically from this ascension and from this timeline shift, but I've been remade to do this work. So I am here as an instrument to transmute trauma. And I have embraced this truth about myself because it doesn't make my life the easiest. My life will always have challenges, but I've been given the third eye perspective so I can see exactly what's happening and I can manage my response to it. And I can engage my emotional and energetic tools to transmute it. So I've been told that during a separation phase that John and I are going to experience after we meet, because we are going to be out of alignment energetically, we're going to go through a separation phase. And during that phase, because I've been activated by John, when we come together in the real world, we're going to activate each other. I'm going to send him into a spiral that he's got to have to manage on his own. And I am going to be activated as well by him with more trauma that is not necessarily in my body because I'm not carrying it necessarily, but I am transmuting. So I'm receiving this trauma and I'm transmuting it for my bloodline. And what I was told I may experience or I will experience is during this separation with my twin flame, I'm going to experience lower vibrational emotions that will not feel like mine. That's sadness and fear and anger even. Depression, whatever the feelings are. Now you imagine a normal human, and I don't mean to say normal like special, just somebody who doesn't know any better, experiencing these feelings and not understanding them, how that could traumatize someone. And this is why I have been remade into this instrument, so I will not be traumatized. I will know what I need to do when I have these feelings of hopelessness and of pain and fear that are going to come up because I've been activated by John. So this is the purpose, part of the purpose of John and I coming together. And I don't know, and I've been told very clearly that not to expect an outcome. I have been growing at a rate that I cannot even describe. I have been on an express lane of evolution because of what I came here to do. So when John and I come together, and our misalignment energetically is going to be very, very obvious to him as well as me. But to me, I'll know that I'll be doing something that I wouldn't normally do in the real world, engaging with a lower frequency person. And I'm going to more than likely turn away from this person because he is not going to meet my frequency. But during my time away from him, I'm also continuing to grow in leaps and bounds as I'm transmuting this trauma. And when and if John and I reunite again, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. I don't know who I'm going to be at that time and if I'm going to want this relationship again. If I'm going to feel a connection even though he's a twin flame. So I don't really, all I've been taught to expect is to expect nothing. I've been taught to just follow my intuitive feeling, and that's what I intend to do. So I've let go of the ideal of John and I as this high vibrating love affair. At the other end of this separation, I don't know who he's going to be or who I'm going to be, and I have to let that go. So I've let all that go, and I've even gotten to the point where I realize that I may be stepping into this new timeline alone. I've always imagined moving to New Zealand with John and him and I together in this brilliant love, this true love that the first time both of us are going to experience, would find a home on the coast and we'd buy it together and we'd live the rest of our lives there. I don't know anymore if that's the way this is going to unfold. I've been told over and over to not expect what I think is going to happen, that it's not going to happen the way I think it is, that the mystery and the unknown is what I'm made for. And this resonates so powerfully with me because I have always, even throughout my life in my darkest times, been happy to move and change everything. I always loved the idea of changing a job, even one that I liked, because it meant I can drop everything that I knew and I can start something brand new. I've always embraced change. So this to me is the most exciting part of my journey. So of course I embrace it. I don't know what's going to happen. At this point, I don't know when I'm going to meet John. I don't know how long our separation is going to be or if we're going to be able to come back together after it. I have no idea. And I've been taught to let that all go. And I have absolutely done that. And it has honestly been quite liberating. Although I know the general theme of my entire future, I don't know anything really. I know that in this new timeline, I'm meant to experience the blessings that I could not have earned in the lower frequencies. And that is true love, which I don't know how that's going to turn out. The other is a professional success, which I don't know how that is going to emerge either. I talked about Tom Goodman in my last episode. I don't know if that's going to be a figure in this part of my future or not. I'm told that I'm going to have a lot of money, that it's my birthright to be abundant in this lifetime, and that I need to adjust, me, the human being, to having a lot of money. And I have to accept my worthiness because it's my birthright. And I think I want to talk a little bit more about that. This is something I've avoided. And I noticed that I've censored myself in the last couple of episodes when I started to talk about this. And one thing I embrace with these episodes is I am basically channeling right now. I don't think about what I'm going to say very much at all. And when I start to think, I know I'm done. So in 2 episodes, I remember when I started to talk about something, I censored myself and I said, well, I'm not going to talk about that now. And I was thinking this morning, why aren't I talking about that? And I realized that something has been shifted, and I'll explain that. There have been very many modern tarot readings. They come every single day in multiples. But what I've understood and realized about these readings, these modern readings, is they differ from the original ones. The original ones, when my soul tribe was just trying to get my attention and trying to capture my attention and keep it so they can tell me what I needed to know about my life here, which was fragments, again, of true love with a twin flame who I've known about this man, and I'll say this again, since September of 2021. It is October of 2024. So 3 years now, I have known about this twin flame. 2 years, June of 2022, I learned who he was. I saw his face and I learned his name because his company reached out to my daughter on a social professional platform, and my daughter actually spoke on the phone with him, and she knew that it was him. So that all happened to let me know that, yes, you have a twin flame. Yes, you're coming into union with him someday. Let go of all expectations, but this is what we're getting you ready for. I was also told back in the original tarot I would have a lot of money because I would share it. I was told that I would live in an island, on an island in the middle of nowhere. And I was led serendipitously through messages to New Zealand. And it just so happened that the gentleman who spoke to my daughter serendipitously, or however you want to put it, 7, 8 months after I learned that I had a twin flame, is a gentleman from New Zealand. So tell me that's all a coincidence, and I will tell you don't understand the universe. This is what synchronistic uh, orchestration of the universe is. This is what it looks like. It's serendipitous meetings and events, it's synchronicities in your life. This is the universe or your soul team orchestrating your future for you. So I was told all this in the original tarot, and I integrated it as, and I believed it. And I think at that point, I had no choice but to either believe or not believe. Now I'm at a time in my evolution where I've embodied all of this. I don't believe or not believe anything. I just know this man is my twin flame. We are meant to come together. How that goes is yet to be seen. And that's why I've been told that I need to rely on my intuition to feel my way through what happens. So the original tarot was basically informative, where it got me to trust. And the modern tarot, I regard more as activations. And what I mean by that is when I have a download when I sleep, and I've talked about this at length, I'm told to lie in bed in the mornings to integrate what might have come through in the nighttime into my subconscious. So this morning integration allows what came into my subconscious to rise into my conscious mind or my awareness. And through that conscious awareness, that seed that I received, it blossoms into knowing. And I won't even use the word understanding anymore. That is completely superfluous. I have an open channel to source, my guides, my higher self. I know that when what comes through me is true. I no longer question it. I have evolved beyond that need to be validated because I'm now this cohesive, coherent, humming, harmonizing, synchronized instrument of to my higher self, with my higher self and the universe. So the modern readings are activations. So when I get a reading and I get them daily, I can't look at them daily anymore because I need time to integrate them. And one of the readings that I received recently, this is about a week and a half ago at this point, was about my origins as a soul. And I've received fragments of this, and I'll tell you briefly what I've received. A couple of years ago, I received a message that I am from a planet called Mintaka. And I did an episode, oh boy, what's it called? I don't remember the episode. If I remember, I'll pin it in the description, where I talked about going to see the movie Avatar, The Way of Water. And I went by myself to the theater. Although I was supposed to go with a group, everybody ended up begging off, and I ended up going alone, which of course I understood I was meant to. I normally went to the theater by myself. It was unusual for me to go with even one other person. I saw this movie, and if you've seen the movie, you will know what I'm talking about. About halfway through the movie, it's a very long movie. The characters move from their from where they live. They're driven off their land basically to the water, to the ocean, and they end up living with a water tribe. Uh, I think they're the Navi, is what they're called in the movie. They end up living with a water tribe, and they have to adapt to living near and in the water. And during these scenes, there's a lot of underwater scenes with sea creatures. And I described how I had a dramatic emotional reaction to the whales. It's so much so that I sobbed during that part of the movie. And as I left the theater, I understood. I think it was, I wrote the article Resonation after this because I understood. I kept being the word resonation kept following me. And I went through this exercise of seeing this movie and connecting emotionally to these water creatures for me to develop that article. That's how this works. I get a seed of wisdom and it blossoms in my world in an interactive way. That's why I refer to myself as an experiential transducer, because I'm meant to experience this wisdom in my life, and then I can transduce it out through my voice and my vibration. So that movie helped me to understand something intuitively that I had been receiving in the tarot messages. And this is back in the original tarot a couple of years ago. I had been receiving messages that I was from Mintaka, because I was asking, where's my soul from? And I remember two different readings. One was an online tarot reading, and the other was my own oracle reading, where the card Mintaka came up. And the reader said, whoever listening, you're likely from this planet. There were 3 or 4 other choices, but I resonated with Mintaka. Then I did my own oracle reading about a week later. The Mintaka card came up, which to me validated that. And then very soon later, after, I watched the movie Avatar: The Way of Water, which I had this incredible resonating reaction. And I knew without failure that this was my intuitive exercise to understand and trust that I was more than likely a water creature from the oceans, which Mintaka is a water planet from Mintaka. So I was told in these fragments, this intuitive work, that I am this Mintakan. And I'm like, okay, I'm from Mintaka. That's where I'm from. Well, I've learned so much more about souls and how they are not only multidimensional, but they have several thousands even of incarnations in different forms in different planets. So I am not just from Mintaka. And what I have learned since then, and what I really was not sharing, and I'm not really sure why, I think I thought that if I shared too much about what I knew about my soul's origin, that I would appear a little nuts. And I didn't want to damage what I was doing by adding the nut factor. And then I realized, I was sitting in my chair this morning, that I've been given this information for a reason. And I will I'll go back to something that happened several months ago. I was being told more information about my heritage, and I'm going to share it with you today. And I was so overwhelmed by it, and honestly upset by it, that I said out loud to my soul tribe, I said, why can't I just say who I am and why I'm here, and apologize for what we did, and move on, and say we're here to heal and help? Why can't we just be honest? Why do we have to have all this mystery and all this veiling of who we are? And I understood why, because I was told beyond that this is so interesting, that there's been many, many attempts from the other realms to help humanity evolve, to help humanity ascend out of the lower vibrancies, because our wings have been clipped by other beings, and our DNA has been limited, and we were meant to have 12 strands of DNA, not 2. All of our DNA is meant to be activated, which is the dormancy of our God-given gifts, or goddess-given gifts, that have been dormatized or cut off by gods or beings who created us because they wanted us for another purpose. And if you do some research about the Anunnaki, you'll understand what I'm saying. And I'm reading a book about the Anunnaki I've been led to read right now, because I believe part of my heritage is entangled with theirs. So I was told that the universe has tried many different ways to reach humanity and to help humanity evolve. And a lot of them have failed. And I'll name a couple of them. Jesus Christ. He is a huge figure in religion. He is the figure in religion. He was an avatar. He was an ascended being. And I'm going to tell you what I know. You can agree with me or not. That's up to you. I'm not here to convince you of anything. But he came as an ascended being, as the Son of God, to connect with humanity and help them to see their own power, help them to engage with the etherealness, the cosmic nature of their being. And what ended up happening when Jesus Christ was killed hung on the cross, as an example as a martyr and as a taker or a forgiver of sins. I'm not a big religious. I don't have a lot of religious knowledge, technical knowledge. So forgive me if I'm skipping around here. That he died on the cross for our sins is what we understand. And we forget that he rose again on Easter morning, the day we have Easter egg hunts and worship a bunny, that he rose again to teach us our heritage is that we are unending, infinite beings. But instead of getting that message, we just worshiped him on the cross. So if you go into every church across the world, you see a symbol of Christ on the cross instead of a symbol of Christ rising out of the crypt. So what I'm saying is the message was missed. So again, feel how you feel about that. That deeply resonates in my body as the truth. We venerate his death, which made us martyrs. So now we live our lives accepting death as part of life, and we have to live this martyred life in order to be accepted into heaven, and we can't be expressive or unique or different or even magical or even otherworldly, or we are going against the rules of God. Okay, well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say next because it's offensive to anyone who's truly religious. So I'm not going to say it. What I'm saying is that there is no rule to being alive. We are infinite beings. We were meant to venerate or worship his arising, his infinite life force, because we also have that. So the message was missed. Another example that I was given was of angels, that angels who are angelic creatures would come to earth in their full angel image, wings and all. And there are many examples throughout time of people witnessing an angelic visitation because they have happened. And these angels are here doing the same work, showing humanity their angelic potential or even roots. And all we did was worship a being outside of our understanding. We worshiped something so much brighter and more beautiful than ourselves that we bowed down to her instead of learning from her and accepting that we are her also, or him, doesn't matter. So my point is we venerated and worshiped the angels as something separate and more brilliant and more powerful than ourselves when the message was, you are me. We are one. There's no separation. There's no duality. If I'm an angel, so are you. If I'm Jesus Christ, so are you. We are all the same. We are just in different phases of our evolution, in different levels of perspective or ability to see. So I understand why I didn't come in my true form to earth and say, hey, I'm here to help you, because in my true form, I look like no one else. And I've been given a lot more information about my heritage. And again, I hesitated sharing it, but I guess I'm going to share it today. I was told out after the Mintaka, a couple of years later, this was probably, I don't know, maybe 5-6 months ago by now, I was told through video messages and through validations that I am of angelic roots, that I am one of those angels who is not here with my angel wings. And it's funny because one of the videos that guided me to understand this was a message that said in the title, why does your back itch? And I'm like, oh, I'm always scratching my shoulder blades. And I'm doing it right now as I'm speaking to you. And it's not necessarily meant to be a true thing, but it's meant to capture my attention and resonate in the way that it does. It doesn't matter how I got to the message. Getting to the message is what matters. And the message basically said that I'm of an angelic nature, and I'm an ancient angel to boot. So I've been alive for thousands and thousands of years. I've been a life force for thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of years. And it's funny because I read a book that my sister wrote, and I have a sister who lived in New Zealand. And this is part of the way I was led to New Zealand, by remembering my sister who lived there at the time. She's since passed away. She wrote a book about basically, which was a chronicle of her life, which I'm also doing. I didn't know my sister. She was a half sister. She was a daughter from my mother's first marriage. So she's quite a bit older than I am. I knew her as a child, but as she went away as a young adult, and I never saw her again. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of trauma in my family. There's a lot of abuse. And part of the reason why she disconnected from my family, which is my mother's second marriage, and my father, is because of the abuse that took place in our household. So she left. I honestly never saw her again. She died at the age, I think, 67 in New Zealand. And she was a director, she was an artist, she was a filmmaker, she was incredible. And she wrote this book that I serendipitously had sent to me through my other half sister, who I only speak to sporadically. We had a serendipitous meeting, which is a very occasional. I only talk to her every several years. And she told me about this book and she said, I'm going to send it to you. And she sent it to me. And through another series of serendipities, I won't explain them all, I ended up picking up the book and I started to read it. And I realized that my sister, my half sister, was also an ancient angel. And she was followed. Oh my, this is so amazing. The book is called Shores of Grace, an Odyssey by Stephanie Sinclair. And I'll pin it in the description area if I remember. That's my half sister. She made a movie with Alicia Silverstone called, I don't remember what it's called. Forgive me. But she was a director. She was prolific. She did lots of different things. Her and her husband owned a theater in London called the King's Head Theater for many, many years. They basically brought dinner theater to London back in the 70s. She has an incredible story. They did a biography about her husband, they owned the theater together, which is a movie called Maverick, which I also was able to watch to learn more about my sister and her husband, who were these incredible figures in London for 3 decades or longer. And I read this book about her, and she lived her life, even from a young age, with access to not only her spirit guides, but ascended beings where she spoke to them. And the book is all about her conversations with these ascended beings and how they were telling her these things about the world and about ascended beings and how they come to earth and all these other things that I've been learning. And of course, it was no mistake that this book fell into my hands for me to read about my own half sister, who she was told through these ascended beings that she also had ancient angelic roots. And she was here to teach humanity to evolve, to help them evolve, to illuminate them so they can evolve, which is exactly the reason why I'm here. So my traumatized, alcoholic, violent mother, my earth mother, God bless her, gave birth to 2 angels in this lifetime. So good job, Mom. So I'm reading this book and I'm just in awe of how similar our lives are. Now they're different. And this is what I mean by different attempts from the universe putting ascended beings on earth and seeing how they do. She had a completely different experience. She spent most of her journey questioning everything and had a lot of discomfort and pain associated with her trauma, which a lot was caused by my father and my mother, our mother that we shared. She had trouble transmuting that throughout her life and had a lot of difficulty in her life because of it. So she is 7 years older than me, I believe. She passed away almost exactly the same time I went into my awakening. I never got to speak to her about all of this. She was serendipitously moved to New Zealand because her daughter married a New Zealander, and that's where she lived out the rest of her life, and that's where I'm meant to go as well. So there again, another synchronicity. So she has this lifetime. This book is fascinating. It's called Shores of Grace, an Odyssey by Stephanie Sinclair. And again, I'll try to remember to pin it. It is a wild book. So I'm reading this book, and of course, I'm resonating all over the place because this is what I've been experiencing. I experience it differently, though. I don't have access. I don't hear voices. I don't see anyone. I don't know that she saw anyone either, but she had a close relationship to a handful of ascended beings and her spirit guides. And she went through so much, and she even understood that she was an angel who assisted or was uh, part of the ascension of Jesus Christ. She knew Jesus Christ. So, if you want to go wild and talk about our ancestry, all of us have a story like this. And I don't know if everyone's an angel or knew Jesus Christ. All I'm saying is we all have an infinite life force. And that is the message. It's not the clothing or the way it's packaged or what they or who they are. That's just meant to get your attention. So, angels didn't work in their true form. I wouldn't work in my true form. My sister had difficulty transmuting her trauma and her bloodline trauma, so she could never fully engage, at least not in the book where she described, with her mission here. Not to discount it at all. That was her journey. That was part of her evolution. She may have very well died without being healed. I don't know. The book ended years before she passed away. I don't know. I didn't know her. But I know that my journey, I was meant to heal not only myself, but also the trauma from my bloodline. So this is a different iteration of a being coming to earth to help humanity. And I'm not only here to illuminate others, to help them connect to their own intuitive channel, which is something I identified long before I knew what it meant. And it's a statement on my website that I wrote years ago. But I'm also here as an instrument to heal the trauma in my bloodline. So my journey, where I am in my evolution allows me to do this. I'm no longer trapped in the lower vibrancies where I can't see the purpose of all of this. So I've been told that I'm an ancient angel. And I've kept this under wraps. I haven't talked to anybody about this because I don't want to look nuts. I mean, and honestly have everything else be discounted, but I cannot any longer. I think I'm not meant to any longer hold this in because it's all part of my story. And it's not just for you. It's also for me and for my community and my bloodline and for John and anyone else who's meant to come into my life to help me on this journey, my star family who are coming in to help me. So another thing I found out recently, when I keep asking, please tell me more about who I am, I'm really curious. Another thing I found out several months ago that I have not shared, and I've almost shared a few times, is that I am a Pleiadian. And I was serendipitously led to this understanding through many, many messages. And where I questioned one day, and you have to understand the 4 books that I read by Barbara Marciniak that I've talked about at length, that are Pleiadian channelings. This Barbara Marciniak was a channeler connected to the Pleiadian community in the star system of the Pleiades. And they came to her at an early age. They appeared to her in her room as blue beings, and she knew they were benevolent. She wasn't afraid. And they basically talked to her about what her purpose was going to be for them as a channel for their teachings. And the 4 books that I've read by Barbara Marciniak are about those teachings. And after I read the books, I said out loud, am I a Pleiadian? I feel like I'm getting so much support from the Pleiadians. And in the early tarot messages, the very, very early ones, I was told, and I think I just mentioned this recently, that the Pleiadians have a message for you. And I was led to a message on YouTube or my video channel about the Pleiadians and their purpose and who they were. And since then, I've been getting them continuously. They've been a constant source of support throughout the entire 3.5 years that I've been in this isolation. And after reading the books, I said out loud, am I a Pleiadian? And of course, I was responded to almost immediately with 3 separate messages. And I always would say in the beginning, I need 3 validations because I'm not going to believe it. This is too unbelievable. And of course, I received 3 validations. And the first one was a video on YouTube about eye color and your relation to your origins. And it very clearly said if you have brown eyes, which I did at the time, your heritage is likely Pleiadian. Another one was your astrological sign and what month you were born, something like that. if you were born in this month, or if you have this birth date or this, I can't remember, the zodiac sign, you are likely a Pleiadian. And then there was one other one. So I'm like, okay, I'm a Pleiadian. I thought I was from Mintaka. I was confused. I didn't know. And then I, of course, learned that we have multiple incarnations, and we're not just one thing. And in my sister's book, this was validated as well, because her guides told her that she had her most recent incarnation before her Earth was a Pleiadian, that she also lived in the Pleiades. So this is not a mistake. This is not coincidence. This is synchronicity. This is the universe validating what I intuitively knew. And my sister as well, my half sister, was also a Pleiadian ancient angel, as I am. I don't know that she ever was incarnated on Mintaka as a water creature. I have no idea beyond that, but I know those two things are the same. Well, I've been receiving a lot of messages from the Pleiadians, and one I received recently I really resonated with, so much so that I wrote a section in my book about a month ago about it. And I'll reiterate it to you as best as I remember, and I actually wrote a couple of notes because it was wild. So I've understood that I'm a Pleiadian for a long time, and I had a lot of difficulty with this back when I wrote the article "Resurrection of the Goddess," because what I learned during that phase, that dimensional shift, back in April and May of this year, 2024, was that oh God, this is also hard to recall. That when I learned about the Anunnaki and how they basically limited the potential of humans to use them as slaves back in hundreds of thousands of years before we even, our histories indicate the beginning of humankind. That what the Anunnaki did was they limited the DNA, and they made the other DNA, the rest of the DNA, mostly dormant. This is the junk DNA that scientists don't understand why it's there. These are our gifts and powers that were truncated so we would be ignorant to them, so we would be obedient to the Anunnaki, who were gods. I'm not making any of this up. This is all very well documented, so please take your time and look into that if you're interested. So knowing this all kind of came together after that dimensional shift back in April, May, and before I wrote that article, I broke down and cried on Easter morning when I realized that because I was Pleiadian, and because my ancestry were linked to the Anunnaki, and that we were geneticists, and we also tinkered with the human genome, that we were partially responsible for the truncated DNA and the truncated potential of humanity. The morning that I realized that what co-creation was, this was Easter morning, and I wrote about this and did 2 episodes. I did not talk about this in the episode. I did write about it. I think I wrote about it in the article, is that I cried on the side of my bed because I realized that my bloodline, my ancestry, likely had a hand in damaging the potential of humanity. And this is part of the reason why the Pleiadian species are here in human form to help redeem themselves, or to rectify that as best they are able by helping humanity to ascend. I cried on the side of my bed the morning when I realized that I may have had a hand in that, or my ancestors did. So this is how big this has gotten. And you have to understand, this has been getting broader and more broad every day. And a recent reading was talking about the Pleiadians and the origins of the Pleiadians, which I didn't understand at all. The Pleiadians are refugees from a star system called Menses. They are not from the Pleiades. And they migrated, or they left their star system, Menses, which is near, I'm going to look at my notes, near Vega. They left escaping the devastation of the Orion-Lyran War. And I don't know when this was, way before our time was ever started to be recorded, but this is who the Pleiadians are. They are refugees from the Menses star system. They escaped this war between the Orion and the Lyrans, and they resettled in the Pleiades star system. And from what I was told or understand through a video, this is not a nuance or intuitive. This is words being spoken to me. Uh, I believe, these videos are channeled by the Pleiadians. So they're not third party information. I've been receiving these for years. Is the Pleiadians were basically broken into three different factions. And I think of the movie Divergent, which makes me think of that. So that'll give you an idea of what this is. That one of the factions was called the Ahel or the Ahel. And there was a faction called the Nur and a faction called the Tal, Taal. And these three factions, I don't know that they made up the whole community. I believe these were just the architects of the worlds. So if you take the Earth and you have the general population, which are all humans living their lives, and then you have the hierarchy of the bodies who design the infrastructure, who create the government, who make sure the water flows. You know what I mean? The people in charge of making an area livable. So these three factions of the general population were responsible for creating the worlds. Now they're coming to a barren planet, allegedly. I don't know exactly how this works, but the Ahel or Ahel were responsible for creating ecosystems. They were responsible for making sure the planet could support life. So they created the trees and the rivers and the oceans and the grass and the vegetation and the animals. They gave a barren planet an ecosystem. Let me look at my notes so I don't forget here. I keep looking at notes is ridiculous when I'm doing this. The Noor were responsible for building the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure of the planet, so people could live there. And then the Tal were the keepers of wisdom. They kept the wisdom of all the other species, or all the species, this is a lot of integration. You have to understand. There's a lot of cross-populating here. The Pleiadians are not just one thing. They are many different types of species intermingled from, mixing races, I guess is the best way to put it. So they can appear very different. But from what I understand, and I have to say really quickly before I move on, that when I saw this video, I deeply resonated with the Ahel because I have such a deep connection to the earth. And I thought maybe this was just kind of normal, my connection to the earth. But my connection to the earth has evolved so very much that I don't even, it's not anything I could have imagined before. And what I mean is I had to remove a tree in my backyard, a beautiful twisted willow, that I would visit often in my backyard and just put my hands on her. And I would sit with her for a few minutes. There's another tree in my front yard I do this with. And I have two other pines that are gorgeous, but they're not really user friendly to touch because of their spines. So I spend a lot of time with this twisted willow and with this other tree. I don't know what kind it is on my property. And I had to remove this tree because there was a storm on August 6th, that incredible storm that yielded so much in my life, that actually ripped the tree in half. And I didn't notice it till about a month later, but I knew I had to get it removed. And I went through this big thing to have it removed, which I think I might have mentioned the intuitive exercise that ended up being for me, which I won't go into now. But I had to have the tree removed. And I learned through a message somewhere that when I'm dealing with the vegetation outside, that to treat them like beings, because they are all just a different life form. We're all connected. We're all alive. We all have a molecular structure. So when I go outside and mow the lawn, I lay my hand on the ground and I say, please pull back your energy. I'm going to mow the surface. When I trim my trees, branches or whatever, I put my hands on the tree and I say, please pull your energy back. I'm going to trim your branches. And I do this as a sign of respect and of love, to show that I don't want to harm you, that I'm doing something I have to do outwardly, but I want you to pull your energy back so you're not negatively impacted by it. This is how close I have come to Mother Nature, to this earth. I spend time on her every day, either in my leather shoes or barefoot. I walk as often as I can. I go to the rivers. This is my life whenever I can. So I have a very deep connection with the earth. And so I resonated powerfully with the ahel, the builders of the ecosystems. And I'm like, oh, of course, that makes sense. And another thing I know about myself, which was told to me in an original tarot, was I have a life that is going on at the same time in a different dimension where I am an elemental. And if you're familiar with elementals and fairies, they are, again, mythical creatures, but they absolutely exist. They are beings that we cannot see because of their frequency. They live in a different frequency or dimension. We cannot see them, but they protect the earth and the vegetation and the animals. And whenever I go outside, I speak to them. I mean, I have become one with nature, and no wonder, because I resonated so deeply with this. So I'm thinking about all this message that I got that day, and this is what I mean by having to integrate. I went out to mow the lawn because when I have a message that resonates powerfully, I have to integrate it. So I can't just listen to one after another. I only do one every few days. I went out to mow the lawn, and I've been asking my soul team to tell me more about myself. And one of the recent readings that I posted, and actually I'm including in my book, was about the fact that it's time for me to remember who I am. That I'm moving into this new timeline and I'm meant to know who I am. And that I'm not going to be able to recognize myself once this transformation is over. And I'm like, whoa, what does that mean? So I went out to mow the lawn a little while later, and as I'm pushing my mower around the yard, I had a realization, and I was just stunned. I'm standing with my motor, my electric lawnmower whirring in front of me in awe. And I didn't stop because I knew when I'm doing something menial or mindless is when I'm most receptive to integrate what I learned. So I kept mowing, and as I'm mowing, I'm just going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I had an understanding or a remembrance of who I am. And I'll talk about why I feel this way. As I'm mowing the lawn, it just occurred to me another puzzle piece, another fragment, another message came together to form an image that I was not able to see before. And I said out loud, I said, oh my gosh, I am a Pleiadian Ahel or Ahel. And I said, of course, oh my gosh, this is who I am in human form. And of course, I'm not walking around in my true form, because if I did, I would be 7 to 9 feet tall and likely have light blue skin and white hair. We look kind of human. We are most closely related to an Asian / Norway or Swedish looking in the face. But we're very tall, 7 to 9 feet. We have blue or green skin, and we have illuminated white hair, long white hair. So there's images of these beings in this video where I'm looking at all these different beings. And I've seen these pictures many, many times throughout the last 3 years as I've learned about the Pleiadians. And I'm like, no wonder I've learned so much about the Pleiadians. I also learned something interesting that I'll share with you, is I've always resonated or been attracted to the Subaru logo. And this is a little off course, so forgive me, but the Subaru logo is a series of stars, stylized stars. And I always wondered what they were. And I finally got curious enough and I Googled it. And the word Subaru means Pleiades. And the stylized stars in the logo is the Pleiades star system. So there's that for a resonation and a synchronicity. So anyway, I realized, and as I'm mowing the lawn in my gloves and my yard clothes, that I am a Pleiadian Ahel or Ahel. I'm not sure if it's Ahel or Ahel, Ahel. And that in my home world, I build the ecosystems. I maintain and build ecosystems. And another thing that the Ahel is responsible for that made me cry, forgive me, is they are master geneticists. So, of course, this tied back to the Pleiadians having a hand in the human genome, which ended up truncating humanity's potential. So that resonates very powerful, and it makes me emotional because I know this is part of what I'm here to transmute, is this mistake that my species made 100,000 years ago when tinkering with new humanity. So this is what I've learned. This is what I remembered about my heritage, that I am a Pleiadian Ahel with ancient angelic roots who had at least one lifetime on a planet called Mintaka. And the reason this is also meaningful is because after that reading, before I had this realization, I was sitting in my glider thinking about what I learned and how in the reading it said, and I included this in my book, that I am of high status in the ethereal realm. That back home, I'm a very important figure, and that's why I have so much support on this journey. And I always thought everybody had a team of spirit guides that talked to them every day through many different mediums, not just psychic mediums, but I mean mediums like messages and otherwise. I just thought everybody had this. And I'm talking like everybody had this, but I don't know now. All I know now is that I'm apparently of high status, is how it's put. And I'm very highly regarded in the ethereal realm, in my home, at my home planet or wherever I am. And that's the reason why I have so much support here, because I'm here on a very specific mission, not just to live a human life and evolve personally, but I'm here with the twin flame element, with this element of healing trauma for my bloodline to do something very specific here. And I don't know the breadth of it yet. I'm still learning, but I felt compelled finally to share this information about myself. And I wanted to also talk about something else briefly, because I know I've already been an hour here, which is ridiculous, is that I have been told that because my job is basically to transmute trauma, I can't have any blockages in my body. And there is still a blockage in my body. And I believe this blockage is in my root chakra, because this is the only area of my body that I've even identified from this human perspective that still needs healing. And my root chakra is where my sexuality is. And I just assumed this would be healed with my twin flame in a loving, cooperative, respectful relationship. But this was not the whole story. This message talked about how I need to be clear and open to receive this energy from this new timeline. And I can feel this timeline coming in and out of my body, and I'll explain what it feels like. If you're familiar with a jet stream in the ocean, what this is, and if you've seen the movie Finding Nemo, you'll know what I'm talking about. Again, not a mistake that I watched that movie not that long ago. A jet stream is a current of water that runs through the ocean with its own frequency. A jet stream is a channel or a current of energy that rushes through it, that is an enclosed frequency of energy that pushes the water at a high speed through a dormant or a quiet ocean. It feels like a jet stream of energy, of higher frequency energy coming from this new timeline. And when it touches my body, it creates these feelings of moving sickness that I've described, that I'm experiencing on and off. It's a feeling of dizziness. It's a feeling of feeling off, like I can't be steady, even though I'm not falling over. And I also have occasional nausea. So it feels like motion sickness, like I just got off of a roller coaster or a spinning ride. And I have vertigo too. So to me, this is a really powerful feeling dizzy. And I understand now that this timeline is of a higher frequency. So when this higher frequency touches this lower frequency that my body is made of, it causes emotion sickness. So if you imagine moving through time, and this has been the example that's been used in the tarot of the movie Back to the Future. If you travel through time, you can imagine your body is denser than your energy. So as you travel through this portal and you're instantly in another time, your energy arrives before your physical molecular structure does, and it kind of has to come back together in a rush, and that causes that feeling of disorientation, dizziness, and even nausea. And that's how this has been described to me, that I'm going through these longer and longer episodes of this feeling of motion sickness, because this timeline energy is merging with my current energy. And in order for this merge to take place cleanly, my body has to be at the right frequency in order to be swept into this jet stream. And in this jet stream, I'll be taken to this new epoch. That's how this, in my mind, how this feels. So I was told that I have to remove all blockages in my body. And I'm like, well, how do I do this? I've been transmuting my ass off. What do I do? Well, of course, the answer came in a very serendipitous event. I looked, oh my God, this is amazing how this happened. This was 4 days ago. It was on October 22nd. Today's the 27th, so that's not four, whatever that is. On the 22nd, I opened my social media in the morning and there was an advertisement that I've never seen before for a breathwork class. And I'm like, I instantly was curious, but I didn't feel anything else. And I'm like, oh, what is this? And I know, especially on this social media platform, I don't get much that isn't meant for me as a message. This is where all the messages from my twin flame come, which still come every single day in multiples. This is where messages about me and my journey come. I just received another one yesterday about me going through this, what I'm going through right now as a woman who has ascended beyond the ability to be with a regular guy. And I won't go into it, but there's always something there of encouragement, validation, or information. So I looked at this video and I was on mute, so I couldn't hear it. And I'm like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. And I'm looking at the video without the sound and I'm reading it a little bit. It's coming to a city near me. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. But I still didn't feel too much until I hit unmute. And then this gentleman, the facilitator, the breath work guy, um, was at a point in the video where he was, oh God, I don't know how to describe this. He was beating a drum and yelling. It was like a tribal yell where he was screaming and it felt like he was in pain. And I knew instantly that he was transmuting. And I thought, oh, and as soon as I heard his voice, I began to get emotional. I started to cry. So I knew I was meant to go to this gathering. Now you have to realize I've been in almost perfect isolation for 3.5 years. I don't go anywhere. I was going to dinner once a month, and I probably will still go out to dinner on occasion with my first in-laws, who I care about very much. I see them occasionally, but I don't go anywhere on a regular basis except for the grocery store and my daughters. And if I have to run an errand, that's it. I don't drive anywhere really. And in this, what I call ascendy state, I've given it a nickname when I feel ascension symptoms. I say I'm feeling ascendy today. I have not really ventured too many places because I need to rest a lot. So I see this message. I know I'm supposed to go to this. This is so funny how it happened. I said out loud, okay, I get it. I need to go to this. I believe I need to go to this. And I was getting ready to do my morning workout and I saved the link because I knew I would look at it again and buy tickets. And I went to do my energy work. And as I started doing it, I said out loud, are you going to at least let me finish my exercise? And then I said, oh, I guess not. And I laughed and I went up to my home office and I bought the ticket to a nearby city, which is about 30 minutes away, which is our downtown area, which I never go because it's frustrating and stressful to drive there. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to have to drive there. But I knew I was supposed to do it. And I knew why. I knew that this was going to help me remove the blockage in my root chakra. And so I went completely as a leap of faith, didn't know for sure if I was going to energetically be able to do it because of the drive and the stress of being in a group of people that, you know what I'm saying? I've been alone so much. I just got in my truck and I started driving and I went there and I got there and I felt pretty good, although I was still feeling very dizzy and off. And I went up into this building and I put my mat on the floor, which was 10 inches away from the person on my right and my left. And I'm like, okay, you're going to be fine. Just breathe. You're good. And I felt very stressed. And I was very concerned about the part of the program where I knew I had to lie down because of my vertigo. And I can manage my vertigo every day. It's not that big of a deal. But if I have to quickly lie on my back, I avoid that at all costs. So if anybody who has vertigo, you know what I'm talking about. I knew I was going to have to lie back and I was a little bit afraid of that. And I had all these fears and all these discomforts coming up. And I just kept telling myself, just relax, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And when the program began and this gentleman, this incredible young man who is just beautiful, started to speak and started to talk about what to expect and all these things, I relaxed a little bit. And especially because he talked about what we might experience going through this breath work. And one of the side effects was that your hands can go numb. And of course, this created more fear in my body because when I had a vertigo event years and years ago. I ended up in the emergency room because I didn't know what happened to me. I had a very, I laid back too quickly. I was overwhelmed with this dizziness and my body became rigid. I couldn't move. So my husband at the time called the EMT and they came and got me. And the guy told me, he goes, it's you hyperventilated, that causes that. I'm like, oh, okay. So cool. So I understood then what happened. He's telling me it's going to happen again. I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm good. I think I got this. So anyway, when the time came and we had to lie back, I, of course, was very nervous, but I just trusted that I was going to be okay. In this room full of strangers, I didn't know anyone. In this downtown area, I hate driving to, even when I feel good. I knew I was meant to be there. And we started this breathing, and it was, to say it was uncomfortable is an understatement. If you've ever breathed purposefully in an aggressive way, and I don't know how else to describe it, it's uncomfortable, especially when you do it repeatedly. And he kept just saying, lean into the discomfort. It's this is where you're going deep. Lean into the discomfort. So the first session of intense breathing, I was pretty much okay. I had to stop a few times. And as I stopped, I realized I was getting emotional. I could feel a tear roll down my face. And I'm like, okay, here we go. He had us stop and rest for a few seconds. And then we started the second segment of this breathing, which was more intense. And again, honestly, there were 3 times during this session that I thought I was going to quit. I'm like, I can't do this. This is too hard. The discomfort was monumental, not just with the way I already felt, but with the way my body was feeling. By the second segment of intensified breathing, my hands went numb. And I'm like, okay, you're fine. Just relax, relax. And I kept doing it. And as I kept going, I just started to sob. And I knew that what was meant to be was happening. And I just kept saying to myself, you're doing this for your ancestors. You're doing this for your ancestors. And I was just laughing at myself because I knew I had to do this. It was so uncomfortable. So by the third segment of the breathing, I knew that I was deep into this and I couldn't let up now. And in the third session, or the third time we did the intensified breathing, my forearms were now numb all the way up to my elbows. And I was sobbing hysterically. I mean, I was trying to contain myself because I was aware I was in a group of people, but I was sobbing and I could hear people around me sobbing as well. So I'm like, okay, this is a communal experience, let it out. And in the most intense moments of it, we were supposed to lie still and I couldn't, though. I lifted up my hands and I put them on my root chakra over my lower body. And I laid them there. And when I touched my body, I was shocked at the frequency that it was vibrating. I liken this to putting my hand on the hood of a Mack truck when it's running. That's what my body felt like. It was vibrating. I don't want to use the word violently and give you a negative connotation. It was powerfully vibrating. And it was not my hand that was vibrating. It was my body. And I thought to myself, holy crap, what is happening? And I knew through the sobbing and the vibration that something profound was happening. And I didn't identify it till the next day. So we went through the exercise. We were done. We laid on our right side, and he asked us to go back to our inner child and to speak to her, to tell her what you wanted to tell her, whatever came up. I picked my inner child up and I held her and I told her, we're fine. Don't worry. Everything's good. You're going to love the outcome. And I put her back down, and then he had us sit up. And then we sat for a few moments, and he asked if anybody wanted to summarize their experience. And I was kind of out of it. I was shaking like crazy. I was shaking so violently that the girl who was sitting next to me, she was out of my periphery. She was behind me a little bit next to me, put her hand on my knee and asked if I was okay. And I was surprised. I said, oh yeah, I'm fine. I said, I'm just ascendee. And I realized I told her something she probably didn't know what I was talking about. I was violently shaking afterwards. And of course, I just had a major purge. So I'm sitting there gathering myself, and everybody and other people were speaking about their experience. And I, out of nowhere, just raised my hand. I'm like, okay, what are you going to say? I don't know. So he called on me and I said, and they have the cameras on me and everybody's looking at me. And I said, I have to tell you, I've been in isolation for nearly 3.5 years now. And this is the first place I've been guided to go in all that time. Now, I was guided to go to Miami for the conference, but that got postponed. So this is the first place I'm physically going where I'm being called to go. And I said, I came here to remove a blockage in my root chakra so I can shift timelines. And I'm just going on. And I'm like, I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. And everybody kind of yelled at me and said, yeah, we understand. And I looked around and realized that I'm in a room full of people who weren't put off by how I was speaking. And the facilitator, this young man named Igor, he kind of giggled and said, "Oh, a time walker." And it's the first time I ever heard that term. I was not a stranger here. I was in a community of people who, oh my God, it was so liberating to be seen by people who never had seen me before. I could actually speak openly about my experience without people looking at me like I was friggin' nuts. So I said, I'm going through this timeline shift and I know it's an exchange of energy and I needed to remove this blockage. And I'm just going on and on. And I just want to thank you for my spirit guides drew me here. So I just want you to know you have a recommendation from the other realm for the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for coming from another dimension to do this for us. And everybody applauded. It was really wonderful. And when we were all done, I was getting ready to go. And first of all, the woman who put her hand on my knee, thank you again. When I turned to her and told her I was okay, she asked if she could hug me, and she hugged me, and it was so wonderful. I got up and I was talking to the woman next to me who was asking about podcasting, because I must have mentioned that I was a podcaster when I was talking. I talked to her for a few minutes, and then I turned around and there was a woman standing there I had never met, and she said, "Can I just hug you?" And I said, "Sure." And so she hugged me for a really long time, and I said, "Why?" And she pulled away from me and she said, "I'm just glad you're here." And then she hugged me again, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" It was just crazy. I felt like I walked into an environment that I was seen, that people understood what I was going through, and it was pretty remarkable. So anyway, I left there elated. I hadn't eaten or drinking in hours because they recommended not to eat or drink 2 hours before the program, and the program was 2 hours. So it'd been 5 hours or so since I've eaten or drank anything, and I didn't need anything. Normally, I feel weak by not eating or drinking. I was elated. I was in this other energy, and I drove home, no problem, no nervousness at all. And I got home, and I'm like, I didn't even want to eat. I'm like, I'm so like, I felt this new intense energy in my body. I ate my dinner and I sat down for the evening after a shower, and then it hit me, the exhaustion. And I just was like slammed into a wall, like you would not believe. I was completely lethargic, and I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go. Because I know that after something intense, after an intense download or purge that I have to integrate, and this is where the exhaustion comes from. This forces me to rest. I went to bed early, I slept really hard, and I woke up the next morning and I could not move. I laid in bed for 2 hours after I was awake, and I literally couldn't move. I didn't turn over, I couldn't do anything, and I knew that I was integrating something extraordinary. And I started to realize how I imagined what had happened to me in this incredible breathwork session. And I will link the guy below because he's amazing. This guy is from another dimension. His name is Igor Siberia. He's from Asia. He travels the world doing these breathwork classes. They're very affordable. If you feel called, do it. If you don't feel called, I don't know, that's up to you, but I knew I was meant to go to this. I woke up the next morning and I'm laying there completely immobilized, and I'm thinking to myself, what did I just experience? And of course, as I am thinking about it, these understandings are coming into my mind. What happened to me during those most intense moments where my body was vibrating so violently was not just me. And bear with me here. I was in an altered state, which allowed the universe or my soul family or whatever beings from the ethereal realm to come into my body to expel this blockage. I don't know that I would have been able to do it alone, even with this intense environment and this intense experience. I felt the presence of other beings with me there, helping me transmute this incredible blockage in my soul, in my root chakra. And I know there were other blockages I was not consciously aware of that I may not be identifying because I don't know, that were also expelled during this incredible, intense, altered state that I was in. So there's that. And I'm thinking about how I'm feeling the next day, and I'm like, why do I feel like I just got out of surgery? And then it hit me. I said, I feel like I just gave birth. That's what it felt like. And if you've ever given birth, you know, of course, what I'm talking about. I knew that I had given birth, but it wasn't an outward birth. I didn't give birth to something into the world. I the way I verbalized this in my mind was I gave birth in my body to a galaxy. And when I'm talking about full embodiment of my true self, this Pleiadian Ahel, this ancient angel, when I talk about embodying this soul in this physical form, in the framework of this molecular structure, this is what I'm talking about. The vacated space from these blockages in my energetic body allowed for the rest of this galactic being to enter my body. And I believe that's what happened during this incredible experience, is that she entered my body once this energetic imprint of trauma was released, because that's how much space it took up. And this low vibration kept the rest of my body from being able to embody her. That's what happened. And it makes me tear up to think about, because that's what I experienced was, excuse me, I knew that I was experiencing full embodiment of my true self, but I didn't know the extent of it. And this may continue to go on, I don't know. But I know that this profound experience with this breathwork class, and I was petrified to do, that I knew at an act of faith that I needed to do, that this transformation took place. That not only was I relieved of this energetic imprint, this traumatic imprint from my body and my bloodline, but the space that it left, the vibrational quality of that space was allowed to receive the remainder of this galactic being. And I see her as a galaxy. This ancient angel, this Pleiadian Ahel, who is here for an express purpose. And I'll tell you one more thing. During the same reading where I was told that I would remember who I was, that I would begin to remember, and of course the same day I remembered this, is because I'm here for another reason altogether. First of all, it's part of my birthright to be abundant in this lifetime, and I have to adjust my human self to being materially abundant because of who I am in the other realms. It is expected that I'm going to have a lot of material wealth in this life. So that's coming in this new epoch for me. And I'm being told I have to adjust to manage that. And of course I will, because I'm given the tools every day to do that, because I have so much support. Something I was told back in the original tarot, and I'm not making predictions here, just to be clear. I'm talking about what I feel in my body. That's all that I'm doing. I'm not responsible for what happens. That is divine orchestration. I am just a human channel for what's going on in the other realms. And I'm reporting on this microphone, in this podcast, what I know. So let me just clear that. I don't know what's going to happen, but this is what I know in my body right now. This may energetically change if something changes, if another twist or turn comes, I don't know. Just like the twist came where I thought I was going to meet John in Florida during this conference that got postponed. Off the table. I don't know what's going to happen now. But what I know now, during the original tarot messages, I was told that I was going to be given a gift from the universe. And in this reading that I got this day, that I learned, that I remembered that I was a Pleiadian Ahel, I was told also that gifts that are part of my bloodline, gifts that are part of my heritage, are going to be awakened in my human life in this new epoch, and that I was going to be given visions or ideas to bring into the earthly plane. So that was just recently, a week and a half ago. The original tarot said that I would be given an idea from the universe to bring into manifestation in the world. And I thought this I would do with John, because John is a generator or a manifester. I'm a projector. Again, that relationship. So I'm going to receive this idea that will be revolutionary to humanity. And I was also told that lifetimes ago, John and I, who I guess incarnate together every lifetime, also did this several lifetimes ago. I wasn't told what lifetime or what it was, but we were also given an idea that revolutionized something on Earth, that we brought into Earth. So I was told in the original tarot that this idea would be about water. And I think I even mentioned this a few episodes ago in passing, that an idea that I was told I would be given an idea about water. And I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm like, water, what is this? And then, of course, when I'm mowing the lawn and I'm realizing I'm a Pleiadian Ahel or Ahel, and that they are responsible for building and maintaining ecosystems on barren planets. Think about the technology needed to do that. Ecosystems on barren planets. There's no natural inclination for that planet to hold water or air or the Earth's bounty to support life. I am a natural alchemist. This is what my role is back in my home planet. So as I'm remembering that I'm an Ahel, I'm remembering this message and the fact that I'm going to be given these gifts of insight and vision and revolutionary ideas. And of course, it hit me as a Pleiadian Ahel, as an ecosystem builder, I'm going to be given a blueprint, something about water to help our water system on Earth. And I had a whole vision when I was sitting before I mowed the lawn, before I realized that I was an Ahel. I'm thinking about what would this gift be if it's about water? I wonder if it's turning seawater into drinking water or something like that, and that it would be this incredible system that would revolutionize the way we use water. And remembering, of course, a movie I watched that I was guided to watch on Gaia TV called Secret of Water. I did an episode about this called Secret of Abundance, where I learned that water has feelings, that because of the molecular structure that's in every living thing, it responds to negative and positive energy, and it dies in negative energy and it thrives in positive energy. And watch the movie if you want to know what I'm talking about. It helped me to understand that water is living. And because of that movie, which I watched probably more than a year ago, I speak to every glass of water I drink. I speak to the water outside. I speak to the rain. I speak to all of the elements, who I've always felt very connected to. And I say who because they're all spirits. The element of water is a spirit. So is fire and air. And earth, of course, is a being. So I speak to the elements of the earth every day. And of course, because I have this innate connection to the natural earth, because I am a creator of a natural environment on a planet. So as I'm mowing the lawn and thinking about all of this, I'm like, of course, I'm going to be given an idea about revolutionizing the use of water because I am an ecosystem builder. That's what I do. So that mowing the lawn, that before I went to mow the lawn and I remembered the readings about water and how I was going to be giving an idea about water. What am I going to know about water? I don't know yet what that is, but I had a whole daydream about what it might be. And how it will revolutionize how we filter and how we distribute water. Because you have to understand, when we move water from place to place through pipes, it damages the water. It traumatizes it. So when the water arrives at our faucets, it is dead and it has no hydrating ability. So I learned in this movie that we don't die of old age. Even if we're healthy, we still die at between 80 and 110 years old. We die from dehydration because of the low quality of the water, because the water is dead on arrival. So this is the problem that I feel in my body that I'm here to help. And of course, I don't know anything. All I'm doing is taking a leap of faith and talking to you about what I feel, because that's what I feel like I'm meant to do. And I know all of this is having a result of allowing everyone to see the multidimensional quality of our lives here, allowing everyone to see the infinite quality of our life. I'm not going to die on a cross in front of you or appear as an angel so you just worship me. I'm a human woman in her early 60s who had a regular old human life, who is now evolving into this embodiment of my true self. So I can not only be here to talk to you, but I can do these things in the physical world that I can't do from another dimension. The Pleiadians cannot interfere with our world directly. They can't come and change things. This is a free will zone, the earth. And the whole universe knows that when you come into this incarnation, you have absolute free will. So we cannot be controlled by outer sources beyond our own soul, and if we choose to follow our soul's urges. So they can't interfere. So they do this work through humanity, through incarnating in the human form, forgetting everything they know about who they are, erasing who they are completely so they can have an authentic human experience, which is what I've been having for Jesus. So they can evolve with the help of their soul family, their tribe, which apparently I have a very big team, and then do what they came here to do with the hands, eyes, and heart of a human. So they're not technically interfering. But there are many of us here. And it's not anything to fear, and it's not anything to hide. This is a gift. This is not only a gift to me because I get to transmute this trauma through this express lane of this human experience, through this heart and these emotions that we don't have in the other realms. I can't transmute emotions the way I can here because my body is built, this mechanism is built to do it. That's why I had to come into this incarnation to do it. I can do it, I'm sure, in other planets and realms, but not as efficiently and quickly as I can do it here in one lifetime. Do you know what I'm saying? So this is what I'm here to do, and it's nothing to fear. I'm not afraid of this being that I've embodied. I have grown to embrace her and obviously embody her. I cannot wait to see what we do next. But I just wanted to share that I guess I felt like it was time, or my soul felt like it was time, because I honestly didn't believe that I was going to share any of this. But here we are. Um, I remembered who I am. And I don't know what else is going to emerge in my body. I don't know what else I'm going to be guided to do to help me release and transmute more trauma or blockages, or if I'm now ready to receive this new frequency of this new timeline, this jet stream that is coming for me, whether I'm ready or not. This disruptive frequency that is rocking my world right now. But once these timelines merge and I'm swept into this jet stream, into this new epoch, I understand that this frequency sickness will leave me. And I don't know if I'll experience something new or not. So this is where I am on my journey. I just wanted to share this incredible story with you, and I hope it wasn't too wild, and I hope it incites something deep within you that has been lingering and asking for your attention, because if you listen to the end, I imagine that that's true. If you want to reach out, you can reach me on my website, postcardsfromasoul.com, or on my YouTube channel, Postcards from a Soul, at Postcards from a Soul, or, however you'd like on social media, Facebook, Postcards from a Soul, as well as Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If not, I thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so very much.